Seeing how music lovers in the world today embrace the bass truly warms my heart. When I think back to when I first started playing the bass 35 years ago, it was not this way at all. But I was determined when I first started out to be the best bass player in Georgia, if not the rest of the world. All I cared about was being able to do everything that you could possibly do with a bass. When I first started to play, because I came from the guitar, I would sit around with a pick all day and I would work on my picking and I would just, I don't know if the microphone's gonna pick this up, but whatever. I would just sit around and just do like this for hours per day. I would just, to the point to where the only purpose was to be the best. That was all I cared about. And I would just sit there and just work on this stuff all the time. Can't do it like I used to, but either way, I would devote easily a couple of hours to playing everything with a pick. And then I'd put down the pick. Now, in the beginning, all I did was play with a pick. And I quickly learned that I was going to have to use my fingers. So I would devote that time. I would split the time. So I would still keep playing and working on my picking. And then I would go to the bass and just sit here and just work on all this stuff, right? And then I would work on my slap, pop, and tap. I would put so much time and effort into just sitting around and, of course I started out slow and, just all this nonsense, right? If I heard that anyone else played bass, I would go out of my way to find out where I could hear them play. I would even contact them and say, hey, I heard you play bass. I'd love to sit with you and trade licks with you. But I wanted to basically sponge off of them. Anything that they could do that I could not do, I wanted to learn how to do it. And I wanted to do it better than they could do it. And I wanted to be like this jack of all trades with the bass. Like I wanted to completely conquer it. And then I started hearing more bass players that were just far beyond anything I could have imagined doing. And I said to myself, wow, this is insane. I've got a lot of work to do. Then I started venturing outside of my bubble a little bit and meeting other bass players. When I started to do that, I realized it wasn't about being the best anymore. It was about learning how to play my instrument in the most efficient way possible. And what I mean by efficiency is basically serving the song and not your ego. Like think about songs like When Doves Cry or the song Kiss. Those songs didn't have bass in them, but we didn't even miss it because in a weird way, we kind of felt it. I don't know. I mean, please leave a comment below if you felt the same way, because I never really paid attention to the fact that there was no bass on When Doves Cry or Kiss or on the And Justice for All album. I never really would pay attention to when I wasn't hearing the bass because it always seems like it's there. And what I mean by that is it has a feeling to it. Bass has this feel to it. It's an instrument that's unlike any other instrument or any of its other counterparts because it's got this adhesiveness to it. It's like this glue that keeps everything together. It weaves into things. Like it has a way of borrowing from melody and of course rhythm to the point to where it's such an instrument or a sound in general, a frequency that you just feel in your soul. So it's not for everybody, but when you know the bass, you love the bass, really. To know it deeply is to love it, in my opinion. Getting back to meeting other players, there were some local heroes here in Atlanta. Stuck Mojo, of course, who I've mentioned on this channel. Dwayne was a great bassist. He was a solid bass player. He didn't do a bunch of flashy stuff, but you knew the guy could play. That was an eye-opener for me. Then there was Bill Buchanan from the band Skin Deep. There's Adam Nitty. If I'm forgetting some other people, I don't mean to. It's just kind of, I'm digging back really far. I'm going back 3.5 decades. But seeing these guys play really opened my eyes. And when I was still on that quest to be the best, I saw Adam Nitty play somewhere and I was like, man, I was there after the show. I was like, dude, who taught you to play? Because this guy was just killing it, right? So he said, look, if you want to meet this guy and take lessons from him, I will connect you with him, but I'm going to warn you right now, you need to have your act together before you go and play with this guy. If you're going to take lessons from him, you need to do what he says, because if you don't do your stuff, he will get angry with you. If this sounds familiar, I'm gonna go on and say this, but I'm telling you, this has no connection to it. I heard that Joe Satriani was the same way. people would warn other guitar players, or guitarists would warn other guitarists if they were going to go to Joe Satriani to learn from him, that they better do it as he says, or there's going to be trouble. Now, I did not know this about Joe Satriani until a few years back. So this was told to me in 1992 or 93. If Adam was Obi-Wan Kenobi, this guy was the Master Yoda of bass. Look, this guy was a Jedi Master of bass. So I show up there to play for my first lesson with this guy, and I bring my Padula with me. At the time, I think I'd been playing that Padula for about 6 months. So I show up there, and the first thing that this guy says, "Show me what you've got." Now, you want to talk about feeling like you're being put on the spot. So I start noodling around on the bass. I'm like doing all this stuff and sliding and just totally like just throwing everything I got at him, tapping everything. And he's like, okay. And with one finger, this guy is like he's doing all this crazy stuff. I was like, holy crap. I was humbled at that moment. I was already humbled by these other musicians that I had been running into. And there's a side note here. There was a kid who grew up in my town. His name was Mike. And when I met this kid, I knew there was no beating this guy. He was just a straight up prodigy. But the thing that made Mike so special, he was maybe 16 or 17 when I met him. He played bass like a 40-year-old black man, really. He had all this soul and feel. Sorry, but that's the only description I could come up with. And plus, this is what a lot of other musicians would say to me when I would bring Mike around them to play and bring him into the studio. This guy I was working on a gig in the studio or a session. I brought Mike in there because I told this guy, I said, I think I have a better fit for you on the bass because this guy, he plays bass the way I'm more of a rock guy, a metal guy. This guy is a true funk soul player. I want you to meet him. So I brought him to this guy and he's like, you're right, man. I'm going to work with this guy. I'm like, of course, you know? So, and that is the kind of musician I was. I mean, I never wanted to hold any other musicians back. I wanted to build a community where we could all work with one another and love one another and grow together as a community of musicians. It kind of like on this channel, right? So anyway, as Mike is doing all this stuff and he and I are spending a lot of time together, we would sit for hours, you know, at his house or my house, and we would just play bass together and just, oh, what did you do there? Oh, show me that. Okay. And he'd say, what'd you do there? And I was like, I'd show him. And I showed him some of my shortcuts and some things that I would do for the slapping and popping. And he was very big he was a thumb up guy. So he slapped the way like Mark King slapped. And he told me, he said, I got a lot of my slap from Steu Ham. And so he mentioned that Steu Ham video. And I know you guys know, if you guys know bass and you were around back in the day, everyone knows about that Steu Ham video. So I got that video and I learned all that stuff, how to play the peanuts and stuff on there, tapping. I can't do it anymore because I would have to work it out for a second. I'm not going to do that in real time. But either way, yeah, we kept at it. We just kept going around town, wanting to cut heads with people, you know, see who was the best out there and dethrone them if we could, but in a playful way. Then this local band, and when I say local, I mean like a southeastern, like a regional band called What It Is. They came to town. The bassist was the lead singer of this group, and he was great. This guy was amazing. He was really, really good. And Mike saw him before they went on stage, or it may have been after, it doesn't matter, but he saw him off the stage, and Mike said, hey man, show me some licks, man. Show me what you got or whatever. And this guy, he said, and I can't remember his name escapes me right now. But he said, it's not about that, man. Mike came back to me and I was like, what did he say? What did he say? He said, it's not about that. And I'm like, really? That's it? That's what he said? He's like, yeah. And Mike was like, I'm so embarrassed right now, man. Later on, it changed Mike. It really did. It changed him. And it changed me eventually because I started to learn, going back to this teacher. He said, I'm going to give you this music and I want you to learn it. And he gave me all this stuff. I still have the book somewhere in here. He's like, okay, show me what you've learned. Did you study the lesson? I said, yes. And he's like, all right, play it for me. And I'd start playing it, you know, just doing the stuff. And he's like, stop, 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 stop. I'm like, what? And he's like, do it again. And this time I want you to keep your eyes on the sheet. I want you to read what you're playing. And I was like, oh, okay. And I started trying to play again. He goes, stop. He's like, you've memorized it. You did not learn how to read. And I said, I'm sorry, man. I just can't. Then I start saying, well, my ear, I can remember. He's like, doesn't matter. He said, listen to me right now. He was angry. He says, if you do not do exactly everything that I am telling you, you will never, ever see the inside of a studio. You will never see a meaningful stage, and your career as a musician will end right here. He said it with such conviction. A couple more lessons went by, and I ended up quitting. He never called me back or anything. I never heard from him. I never saw him ever again. That gutted me for a long time. I was really hurt by what he said, and those words hung with me, and it hurt my confidence. So when I ended up finally making it to a small stage, close to 7 or 8 months later, I found myself in a band that finally made it to the stage. And right around the time I made it to the stage with that band, we went into the studio. That engineer / producer who worked on that demo with us, he was very clear with me about one thing. And I would hear this time and time again throughout my musical journey. He says, you've got a ridiculous ear, man. And that really went to my head. It got to the point to where I was like, well, anything I can hear, I can play it, I can sing it. I can sing it much easier than I can play it. And I tried to merge those two worlds. And I'm still doing it today. I'm still working at it today. But I can hear something in my head, or I can hear someone else play something, and it's like that game Simon. I can play it back. A couple more years go by. I find myself working with a longtime friend and fellow musician in his studio. And I find myself recording bass all the time. These people would constantly come through at, industry people and everything like that. And they would always tell me, they would always say the same thing. They're like, you've got a great ear. You pick up things quick. You catch on very, very fast. And it continued to go to my head. It gave me an ego because after a while, I started to say, I'm showing that guy. I'm showing, I'm talking about the instructor. I'm showing him. One day he's going to see me. But I never reached out to that teacher ever again. I think back to what he said now. Every once in a while, I'll figure something new out about this instrument. And I've been using the guitar a lot too. I know that's blasphemy to some people, but I've been using the guitar to really get that theory down, as well as the keyboards here, so I can work on these things on the piano, because I'm trying to put it all together, because my ear has always understood these things, but putting it together with the brain so that when I see those notes on a chart, that I understand them more, so that I can serve a song better, so that when I'm sitting with people and we're working on a song, instead of me always figuring all these things out and figuring things out in my head, I typically listen to the other musicians. I don't come up with bass lines by playing. The bass lines typically come to me through my imagination. I will come up with some silly bass line or something just to demo a bass with by fiddling with the bass, yes. But when a song is being written, I focus on where I fit in with the song. So it's not about showcasing my skills. It's about showcasing what I can do for the song. And that's it. And once I do that, and everyone involved, including myself, is satisfied, then I know that I can move on to the next thing. But until I do that, none of it matters. So for all of these people who say things like, oh God, I saw Mohini Del Rey play bass, or Vic Wooten play bass, or Charles, I don't know what his last name is, so I don't want to screw it up. But you guys know who I'm talking about. All these guys, there's a bunch of you. You have my respect, and you've certainly earned it. I respect each and every one of these players. But just because they are who they are doesn't mean that someone who can't play as well as they play should just hang it up. That doesn't make any sense. Play. It's because ultimately I'm more proud of the compositions that I have collaborated on or even created myself than I am of any kind of flashy bass licks I've learned, or any of those times where people were like, wow, man, that was really cool what you just did there. None of that stuff matters to me anymore. All I care about is serving the song, not my ego. The ego's gone, and that's one of those things that I don't miss about my youth, is my ego. There's so much more to music than being able to behead another player. That's just not the point. So the quest to be the best can sometimes end up making you sound just like all the rest, if that makes any sense. I just kind of pulled that out of nowhere, but seriously, that is something that is very important. But I just want to talk about that because that's been really heavy on my mind lately. I just think about that stuff, and that is what the bass is for me. It is an instrument that is all about feeling. Like when I just hit one note and I feel it, you know, and when I hit that C, it's just like, you know, I mean, I just feel that instrument. I know where I need to be on it. And it's just, it is a beautiful thing. And I think that that's all we need to focus on. We need to be more focused on creating music that will stick with us and live on in the ears of others for eternity. That is really what it's all about for me to make music. I don't really care about being the best player anymore. Like those things don't matter. I've been very, very fortunate to see and do the things that I've done without truly completing my training as a musician. And I'll never complete my training. That's another thing that I have failed to realize, or I did fail to realize for so many years, is there is no mountaintop. You got to keep climbing, always keep reaching and striving to be better and better and better as a musician. If it's your thing to be the best technical player, then that's fine too. I'm not knocking that. I'm not knocking that at all because I love to hear those guys. I really do. I enjoy it. I find it as even somewhat educational, but I find it very entertaining. There's nothing else that needs to be done, really. Like it's so much has been done already, and there's so many great players out there doing it that you just have to approach the instrument in your own way, not in the way that someone else did it so that you can be better than them. Does that make sense? But please share your thoughts. I want to know. Leave some comments below, and I'll have another video out to you soon. I've got something I want to celebrate tomorrow that I think is very special, so I will have another video out to you guys tomorrow.